Hi, Ory.
Hey.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. My name is Simunza Muyangana from Zambia. Okay. I happen to be the moderator for this panel. So it's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you as well. I'm totally unprepared. Juggling multiple things and back from saying my mom was a bit unwell, nothing serious. But yeah. But I hope I can wing it. I don't know, is there anything you want me to touch on in particular?
Well, I think hopefully the conversation will be biographical to a certain extent. I follow you on Twitter, so I'll probably go along what I know about you on Twitter. And from the perspective of building the future, I was hoping to start with you by asking you, given your history with you've operated at different spheres. You've built products, so you've been involved in the ecosystem, and then you've gone towards systemic change with the media network, and now you're near the investor side. So I was hoping that, given that view, I wanted to first of all start off with do you think there's hope? What do you hope would be the future of Africa, and what role do you think entrepreneurs can play in it? And I was going to pick up on a tweet that you shared many years ago, but that I'll bring up hopefully later on, where you made the comment around, we can't entrepreneur ourselves out of every problem in Africa. I don't know if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Get that context around just what's the future and then I'll try to bring in the entrepreneurs, Peris and Lungisa, to come and talk about how their enterprises are lending themselves towards addressing some of the challenges we have in Africa, or building the future of Africa to be more real. And then I was hoping to bring in Bosun from the support that entrepreneurs need and the infrastructure, and then bring it back towards things like the various pieces like investment and so forth and so on, but also hoping to lean on your experience coming from what you see and the opportunities and challenges you saw from the top level when you were with our media network and things like that. Would that be fine?
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, great. I'm in Zambia. I work for Bongo Hive, which is an entrepreneur. Okay. Yeah, I'm one of the founders of Bongo Hive. Yeah.
How's Bongo Hive doing nowadays?
We hope we're fine. We're okay. I think this COVID thing had us pivoting towards digital quite early.
Yeah.
So we were figuring that out. Yeah.
Okay, and how are the sessions going so far?
The sessions have been going all right. I came through. I attended 2 sessions before this one, and they seemed fine so far. On bootstrapping first and foremost, and then getting entrepreneurs to build hard businesses. So defining what was, and it literally came down to ambition and talent. From what I picked up. So I'm hoping that we can then talk about, I'm hoping that we can shape out that role that entrepreneurs can play in hopefully building a continent that we can be proud of. Yeah. And how are things going in Kenya?
They're going. We're kind of in a lockdown that's getting a bit farcical. I think people have just opened up the economy for themselves in some parts of the country. I mean, overall, the curfew is still on, but there's a lot more activity, and I think just mostly the frustration. Most of our countries, if informal economy is the economy. And I think people are just trying to figure out how to survive. And I think, like many countries, our governments over leveraged. They don't have the space to provide the kind of assistance that would have been a buffer.
Yes.
So that's, I think, frustration. The numbers, all things considered. If you look at the lack of social distancing,
that's why we find
everything else. Yeah, numbers are not.
Because again, the resources to support the majority of the population, we just don't have them. We're just not in the economy is not in the shape to do that. So, to lock down and not provide resources would have been crazy.
Hey. Ory, long time.
How are you? Long time. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm just here. I caught it reception and I had to replace Bosun because I didn't know what's up with him. He had to get into a meeting.
Okay.
Okay, great. So are you replacing Bosun?
Yeah, I'm replacing Bosun. I told him I was for him. Yeah, so...
Oh, great. Let me...
Although I wouldn't have minded a fireside chat with Auntie Ory. So...
fireside chat with? Yeah. Ory is good people to know. And it's a pleasure, like I said, it's a pleasure to meet you, Ory.
I've been dodging webinars. First of all, I even fixed my hair because I was looking like a bush person. But this week I've done 2 webinars. I've been dodging them. But when I saw what you guys were trying to pull off in 2 weeks, I said, okay. What the team was trying to pull off, I said, I admire hustlers.
Glad you do. Hi, Peris, how are you doing? Hi, my name is Simunza, and I was asked to have the conversation with you on this panel, sort of guided around the conversation around how entrepreneurs can building the future of Africa and how entrepreneurs can do so. Hi, E, it's been a while.
It has been a while. You look well.
Yeah. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Maybe there's a small delay. I'm moving too much for my own good, but I'm good.
Good. How are things in South Africa?
Peris, good to see you. It's been a while. Since Cape Town. I think, was that where I saw you last? Hello?
Can Peris hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi, Ory.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
All right. So just a roundup. I know people are probably coming into the room now, but then I was going to start off with introductions. That I need to get my lighting well. I'll go off with introductions, based on those introductions, then lead into just to get the views of Ory, and largely because she's operated. I think from reading her profile that she's operated at various levels of the entrepreneurial landscape. She's built product. She's supported entrepreneurs and then gone into the whole continental-wide support level system. So to get her view of that and then bring it around to the entrepreneurs. And I was hoping that would be Peris and Lungisa around product development that actually addresses the future of Africa and where we want to be. And then bring it back to supporting entrepreneurs and the infrastructure that does that from E. As a start to the conversation. Would we be fine with that?
Yeah, sounds great.
Great. And you notice I didn't close my wardrobe and everything, but cool. Cool. I will give it 3 more minutes just to get... okay, great. We've got about 70 people here. Should we say if Lungisa does come through, he can join us in the conversation then? Would you be fine with starting?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
All right, great. A very good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's panel in the Afro Renaissance Conference, where in this following hour, we're going to have a conversation on building the future of Africa. So as a continent, roughly 50 years older, we know that it's slightly older than that, but roughly 50 years old, we find ourselves at a place where we're now asked, the conversation we can now have is, where are we? Can we take stock in comparison with the dreams that our forefathers had in getting the independence of this country? And can we build the Africa that they dreamt of? But not only that, but the one we want to see. And in particular to this conversation, it would be great to find out whether entrepreneurs can do that. My name is Simunza Muyangana, and I'll be moderating this conversation. I live in Lusaka, Zambia, and I work for an organization that supports entrepreneurs called Bongo Hive. Joining me on the panel today, I have currently three esteemed guests that I believe can speak very well to the conversation of entrepreneurs being involved in building and building for impact, building for a future of what we can see on the continent. I think sometimes we think of, I would like to think of entrepreneurs as the next level of freedom fighters for this continent, probably economic freedom fighters. But let me find out from the panel themselves by way of introduction. So I'd first like to introduce Ory Okolloh, who is a principal at Asphalt and Inc., and has a storied career, having worked in various organizations, including the All Media Network, where she says, where she worked with All Media Network and the Illuminate Group, both parts of the All Media Group, a diverse collection of companies, organizations, and initiatives united by a common desire to catalyze social impact. She's been involved with policy and strategy with Google, also involved, currently sits on the boards of Stanbic Holdings PLC and the Thomson Reuters founders. Also on the panel is Inolwa Aboyeji. Did I get that right, E?
Yes, you got it right.
Who says he's an entrepreneur in the public interest, with a passion for partnering with missionary talent and capital to build an African future. Great person to have on this chat. You've spent a few years building products, and which include Flutterwave and Andela. And you currently are the founder and general partner of Future Africa. And we'll talk about, I'll give you some time to give some insight into what you're currently doing in your current role. And then, so with us also, the third person on the panel is Peris Bosire, who is works at the intersection of finance, technology, and agriculture, founder of Farm Drive, a data science company using the power of mobile phones, alternative risk modeling, and data science to drive access to meaningful data, financial services, digital credit, insurance, and savings to smallholder farmers and small businesses. So I'll start off with Ory. By way of introducing yourself, Ory, I know that what I said about you I stole off your LinkedIn page, but let me allow you to describe yourself and what you're doing, and also look at what do you hope the future of Africa can be, and given your experience, do you believe entrepreneurs can get involved in building what you believe the future of Africa can be?
Thank you for the introduction, Simunza, and thank you to the organizers of this conference. I have to say I'm quite impressed in what they've been able to pull off in just 2 weeks. And I think if anything speaks to the entrepreneurial spirit in Africa, it is this conference. How would I describe myself now? I think I'm taking a bit of a sabbatical, actually, to think about what's next for me. I find that I am missing entrepreneurial itch, and I feel it's time after helping others build. So we'll see what's next. And also quite focused at the moment on representation in boards, particularly listed boards, because I think many of us need to get smarter about influencing capital and learning how to scale businesses to grow in Africa and how to leverage particularly the opportunities to list. So I'm trying to improve my profile and my experience, and if I'm finding boards are a good way to learn. You asked me, is there hope? There's always hope, and I am an Afro-optimist, if I might say that. I think there's nowhere else I'd rather be. There's nowhere else I'd rather be building. There's nowhere else I'd rather be raising my children. I am always perpetually bullish about the future of the continent, even though we don't get it right. And I think entrepreneurs will be that engine to power it on a number of fronts. Why do I say that? I think one, there's no one anyone who sets out to start to build a business and to try and scale it in our part of the world. I think one, you're driven by nothing but optimism and sheer resilience. Two, more than any other time in the world, there are so many barriers are dropping in terms of whether it's access to connectivity, access to resources. You can yourself anything on the internet. You can learn from other people, and it's getting a bit easier to scale across the continent. And I think as we continue to get more things right, the opportunities will continue to unlock. The third thing, I think, without creating wealth and without arming ourselves, and I'll come back to this later on in terms of leadership and policy, you need wealth, you need capital, and you need to really come from a position where you're informed about the challenges that you're facing to influence policy. And I think, again, there's an opportunity there for entrepreneurs. The gap, perhaps, that I see is that in other regions, the owners of capital and the guys who create jobs and the people who build countries and are hardworking are the guys who run the show. And I think the equation that we need to fix in Africa is that the show is being run by people who have no clue, and they have captured actually the intellectuals, the wealth generators, the owners of capital as subjects to the perils of the state. And so we need to figure out how to shift that equation. And so that's part of what I am spending a lot of my time thinking about. How do we shift that and learn how to contest for power and become political entrepreneurs, I think, as we are, because if we don't fix that, then we'll keep running around in circles.
All right. I think that, that's really a call towards freedom fighting, if there was ever any. And speaking on that, let me ask you, Peris, for example, Farm Drive. First of all, I mean, you're obviously going to introduce yourself, but I'm keen to find out why Farm Drive. What led you towards getting that started? And do you view it as a piece or a block or a whole floor, if you like, towards building the continent and the future of this continent?
Well, thank you, Simunza, and thank you everyone that's attending the session. My name is Peris Bosire. I'm based in Nairobi, where I run Farm Drive, which is a data science company working at the intersection of agriculture and finance. The main work that we do is helping financial institutions, financial service providers build the right data assets or data structures that they need for risk assessment and the right tools to design loan products for smallholder farmers. A lot of what we found in the market is that there are very many entrepreneurs at very different levels, and starting at the level that produces our food and feeds the continent, there are smallholder farmers who literally feed the whole world, but a lot of them don't get the capital they need to grow and to thrive, or the right form of capital. So the work that we do at Farm Drive is being a bridge between the capital providers using technology and the small businesses who are smallholder farmers. So we're also we're entrepreneurs who are powering other smaller entrepreneurs to grow. Why Farm Drive? So I started my journey into entrepreneurship when I was 23, straight out of college. And the reason why I was inspired to jump right into it, fresh from my computer science undergrad from the University of Nairobi, is the entrepreneurship community and buzz was starting up. Actually, not really starting up, but it was thriving in Nairobi with iHub, and there was a lot of attention in terms of using technology to solve problems. And we got exposed to some of that while I was in college in form of events, fellow entrepreneurs coming to speak. I remember people from Kopo, from Pesapal, from Cellulance coming and pitching and interviewing my fellow students. And I felt strongly that these are young people who look like me and they're using tech to solve problems. This is where I need to be. The reason why I chose to particularly focus on agriculture, there's a couple of personal reasons, but the main one that overarches all of them is a lot of families, including mine where I grew up, rely on income from agriculture to provide for their basic needs, to provide for healthcare, for education. A lot of kids that have gone through the Kenyan education system, most of them have actually been educated by their parents who are either teachers or through farming income. And it goes on to show the value of incomes from agriculture. But one other thing that I noticed that was very disturbing to me is the fact that these businesses, the smallholder farmers who I look at as businesses, are not getting any financing. My mom started off as a farmer, then she became a teacher. When she became a teacher, that was the first time she could get a loan because she was in formal employment. Before that, when she was a farmer, there was no bank, no SACCO, no one looking at her as someone who's worthy of a loan. But it's viable business. Most of my school fees was not paid from her income from teaching. It was actually paid from the income from farming because it makes that much more. So for me, the inspiration is being able to drive private capital into small businesses, micro entrepreneurs, starting from the smallholder farmers and building them up because they end up doing so much more in education, healthcare. Most of us are products of that investment into agriculture.
Oh, great! And what's the impact you've had so far on the agrarian economy that you're involved with?
Yeah, I've just remembered the second part of your question. So, do I see ourselves as just a block or an entire flow? We see ourselves as a piece of the equation, a piece of the puzzle. Agriculture, specifically for the agriculture domain, it's very wide. There's our piece, which is being able to drive that private capital to the small businesses that need it so that they can produce, so that they can get their stuff to the market. There's a whole other industry in manufacturing that needs investment to take this output that's being produced and convert it into different value-added products. So we are a piece of the puzzle in a very big chain that's worth trillions of dollars. What has been our impact so far? So it's been 5 years in the business. Started very young, made a lot of mistakes, came in with the assumption that all we need to do is build fancy machine learning models, present those to banks, and they're going to tick and cut us the check and give farmers money. But we learned 1 year into the business that it doesn't work that way. You've got to build the rails. And we spent about 2 years actually putting in our own balance sheet, our own money into lending to smallholder farmers and the SMEs that support them to first of all collect the right data that we need, and to also understand all these assumptions that we are making about farmers needing money. Are they correct assumptions? What kind of money do they need? What kind of products do they need? And from the financing side, what's the limitation? Why are financial institutions not able to drive their capital to the lowest point, at the last mile where the farmers are? So we put in our own money for about 2 years, moved on to a partnership with Safaricom as a telco, rolled out a product called DigiFarm. So far, we've managed to unlock about $7 million, both from our own funding and in partnership with Safaricom, to about 65,000 smallholder farmers in Kenya. About 200,000 loan transactions have happened on our platform. And 2020 is an exciting year for us because having collected that much data in the last 5 years, it puts us in a more powerful position to go to more banks, beyond trying to work with a telco whose main role is communication, and show them why this is a viable sector for investment and how they can do it correctly while making a return for themselves and also generating income and increasing opportunity for the smallholder farmers. And I'm very proud to say that when we came into the market, there were not too many people who were talking about digital lending in agriculture. But as I speak, in Kenya, there's like 5 companies that have come up after Farm Drive, focusing on different parts of the value chain. So our role has been twofold, helping other companies start up with the idea, driving $7 million to the farmers so far in Kenya, and building the baseline or some sort of framework for digital lending into the agriculture sector.
Great, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm going to pick up from some of what you've talked about towards and building products and building companies that actually scalable companies. And talked and asked E to come in here with regards to so if we're going to build companies that build the future of Africa, I'm hoping that scale is one of the factors that we need to be looking out for, or I assume that that's one of the and having built 2 companies and then now moving into your next level as an investor support organization. I think the 2 questions I have to ask are, how does an entrepreneur go around looking at problems worth solving? And then 2, what's the support from your experience and the companies that you've built and the ones that you currently support? What's the support that entrepreneurs need to actually then achieve that once they figure out what are the problems worth solving?
Absolutely. First of all, can you hear me? Simunza?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for that great question. I think the first thing is one thing I've become, the transition I had to make from being an entrepreneur to becoming an investor in folks who are turning our biggest challenges into global business opportunities is really one that came from a little bit of a frustration with seeing a lot of entrepreneurs focus on small problems, right? And not think big enough about the kind of impact they can make if they're able to focus on the big problems and leverage all the firepower that technology and innovation is giving all of us to be able to target those very big problems. And it's really a function of to answer your first question, as we think about those problems, I want to encourage all of us to think about the biggest problems. I'm not talking about food delivery. I know that's a great business, but I'm talking about fundamentally transforming the livelihood of people. And I think there are maybe, a couple big problems that Africa faces today that all of us can agree. And Peris is solving one of the biggest ones, which is how do we feed ourselves, right? We're a population of 1.6 billion people, and we literally have a higher import bill than the rest of the world. Yet we have the capacity to produce the vast majority of the world's food. How can we feed ourselves? And COVID-19 has drawn that back home. But I want us to think about big problems, like how can we house ourselves? Like how can we make it possible for a lot of people to make a living and have, the next 4.5 billion Africans that are going to show up over the next 50 years have jobs and live good lives? And how can we have a financial system that works for Africans and makes them richer? And how can we, so I think for me, the way I look at the problems to solve are the big problems to solve. And I've found a particular flavor in working with the problems that government simply refuses to solve. Right? I always say, for me, what I've looked at, what has inspired a lot of my businesses is really just look at a problem that government should be solving in a decent society, and then build a social enterprise model around solving that problem. And it's a guaranteed money maker. With Andela, there was obviously a challenge with talent, particularly technical talent, despite the fact that our countries were starving of the FX that could come from exporting technical talent to the rest of the world. And the world needed the technical talent. But our governments couldn't wrap their heads around it fast enough. And so we built a business that showed it was possible. And in many ways, that business has shown what is possible, and many others have opened the door and followed suit. In payments, we were like, our government should have taken a more active role in helping our small businesses be able to sell all over the world, right? Be able to become global businesses by lowering the bar. But when our governments refused to do that, and we kept having central banks regulate for the banks instead of for the people, we decided to go in and build a platform that made it possible for the average person to get set up and build a business online in seconds. And you're going to see, because I'm not just an investor, I'm also going to build companies, that's the kind of problems we're focusing on. How, instead of fighting government, can we entrepreneur around government? And I know Auntie Ory is looking at me and saying, we want to entrepreneur for the government. What we need. And that's one element. And then the second question you had asked was basically around how can we, if I recall correctly, what you were asking is like, how do you help the startups start and grow? How do you help them start and then grow and scale to the point where they're inevitable, which is kind of where more or less our expertise lies? You see, what I've found is, we have a framework at the Fund for Africa's Future, or Future Africa, if you like to call it that, for how we support businesses to start, scale, and grow. And we call the framework TD3. So T and then 3 Ds. So TDDD, right? The first T stands for talent. At the end of the day, if you don't have a passionate entrepreneur at the center of your intervention, it will fail. Because unfortunately, unlike most things, entrepreneurship is not something you can hire people to do. They either want to do it or they don't. Now, the question is, when we identify these young people that are passionate about solving a problem, what do we do with them? How do we encourage them? How do we help them build up to the point where it is not possible to unleash them on a problem? And so that's the first talent. Like, how do you build a community of talent around the problem? The next thing is data. How do you leverage that talent to collect the most relevant data that shows you a couple things about the market that you're trying to enter, or the problem you're trying to solve? And it's, what are the real issues that other people are not thinking about? And they're helping you uncover data about what is the market creating innovation opportunity, right? Why are people not able to access this? In reality, I'm not talking about what government officials say in their papers or what McKinsey writes in their report, and what's the true size of this market? When you have the data on those things, right, it will be able to identify what technologies, also another point of data, can help you break through the physical and other constraints that the existing market has. In which case, you can then move on to design. So design is how you leverage technology and innovation, which is the second D, to deliver a solution at the right price for the right person at the right scale, right? And that requires a lot of design thinking about, you have to think about the human experience in designing and delivering that solution. And because people are getting tired, I'll just spit out the last D, which is distribution, which is, okay, now you have the product. Now it works for one guy. How do you find other people like that one guy? How do you find other people like the one guy, or that look like they could be that one guy, or that look like they should be that one guy, and then start to sell the product? What channels do you leverage? What people do you leverage? So it's a very scientific process. You know, it's not undoable. It's not, I'm not a whiz kid. You know, it's just a very simple scientific process. And what we just need to do is encourage and build a community of talent that we can take on this journey. And that's what we're trying to do at the Fund for Africa's Future.
Oh, great. My next question, thank you very much, all three of you. But then my next question is going to come around to all three of you. But I'll sorry, I'm not trying to be mischievous, Ory, but or contrarian. But speaking towards, if we're actually about the failures of where we are with regard, in comparison to the context of other continents, in comparison, and we say, we can make the assumption, or we make the assumption that what has made entrepreneurship succeed in other areas is the role that, for example, government has played in building the framework or a platform that allows a springboard that allows people to then get started from. I could be wrong, and please let me know if I am. And you've said before, and this is following you on Twitter. You've said before, we can't entrepreneur ourselves. We can't entrepreneur ourselves out of every problem that exists on this continent. Could you kindly explain that before we all get heart attacks as to whether or not we can actually solve actual problems?
Yeah.
And then lead in from the scope that you've had. What role can government and other entities play with regards to supporting entrepreneurs? Yeah.
Sure. And I mean, when that quote is always used kind of and presented as an either or, right? So it wasn't meant to be a day on entrepreneurship and saying now we should all go and run for office and become politicians and that sort of thing. But I do feel we shy away from engaging with how the sausage is made. From engaging with how our countries are shaped and built. We have seeded that space too much, actually. And it's a call, even as you're entrepreneuring, to figure out how to, that space has been seeded. It's not that they're smarter or better than us in terms of owning the political spaces. They work hard. And by they, I mean our leaders or our systems. You know, the funny thing, and I was involved in the last election campaign supporting a number of independent candidates. It's not rocket science. It's just that we've seeded the space. And they wake up day in, day out thinking about power and their decisions. And we're not spending enough time as the future of Africa engaging in that space. We've seeded it too much, I think. And so it was a call, one, for entrepreneurs to not completely sort of say, okay, we're just going to do our thing and leave that space. And I'm glad to see, since I made that statement 5 years ago, you're seeing a lot more organized lobbying, for instance, around the digital tax in Kenya, which was going to impact quite a number of businesses. And everyone was waiting for me to say something. I said, no, I'm always the one shouting. Let's see. And there was organizing, there was engaging with the regulator, there was learning how laws are made, and you begin to see there are opportunities where if you're not in the room, and again, you don't have to be in the room as a politician, you can be there as a job creator, you can be there as an owner of capital, you can be there as someone with leverage. And then at some point they'll have to listen to you. And so to Ian's point though, without businesses that scale, if you're just little small startups here and there, you don't have a voice. So think about how to build big companies that can then be listened to is quite critical. The other thing I think that I my point maybe sometimes we say separate things like basic infrastructure. So roads, right? Like, you know, I'd love to see entrepreneurs building roads. I guess drones will kind of help. But if you look at how much is spent by, let's say, a Twiga on fuel, maintaining the fleet, on, you know, dealing with little harassment here and there, on basics like storage, warehousing, etc., that fundamental just infrastructure problems. If we had a functioning in Kenya. My God, because now COVID has allowed people to overcome that fear of online commerce. But and the post office is everywhere, and you can do all sorts of things. You can lay all sorts of things. Amazon grew on the back of the U.S. Postal Service, as innovative as they were. There were basics. Look at what the Indian government is doing around ID and other. I think that basic infrastructure, China did the same thing. So no one can jump over those fundamentals, basic roads, basic functioning systems. And I personally feel, even as we kind of innovate around everything else, good public education could unlock so much. Good shipping and whatever could deal with agriculture, anything. We're spending too much, a huge cost of our food in Africa. The average person spends 40% of their income on food. That's crazy. In the US, it's 10%. You reduce that to 10%, they have money for airtime, they have money for, you're moving them up for consumer spending. That's why we're still kind of in $1 a day market. So if you want to build B2C businesses, people need to have spend. If they're spending 40% on their income just on food, and a huge part of that cost is not the food, is logistics. Guess what? They have no money to spend on all of the other businesses that you're building, right? And so all trajectories have relied on some basic infrastructure, giving the average person, moving them from $1 a day to $5, some discretionary spend that can then power all these other businesses that we're building. But without that, I don't see us scaling. But my dear son E, what do you have to say, my brother?
You want to come
in? I will say before that, like COVID opens up in particular, because it's the first crisis our leaders can run away from. They have to deal with crap hospitals and now angry masses and people and all sorts of things. You're seeing an opening where they're being forced to go back and look at who are the experts, who are guys help us solve this. And so I think jumping into the opportunities, particularly that COVID presents, because it's live, it's global, there's no hiding. They're desperate for solutions. If we miss this moment to shape while they're still picking up our calls and listening to us, I think it would be a missed opportunity to influence both policy and other environments. When I talk, I'm not talking about new things like a Startup Act. The Startup Act is neither here nor there. A few tax changes are neither here nor there. I think government doing the role of government in terms of providing basic infrastructure, and then you free the entrepreneurs to build. I think we're spending enough time on that.
Yeah. E, you had we can both you can jump into with regards to I recall we were in Kigali when we were in a huddle and we were listening to entrepreneurs from we were listening to people from South Africa and specifically Kigali talk about how involved the governments were, and we were shocked at entrepreneurs where we come from. So please jump in.
Yeah, I think that's the background that I come with, is in understanding that, quite frankly, and just like Auntie Ory said, governments are broke, right? So giving them advice, they're never going to act on it. In fact, at least in Nigeria, all the political tendencies come out full force now because there's so little resources to share. There's no room for waste, and everybody has to survive. And the one objection I have, I actually agree with her on a lot of things. I think entrepreneurs have ceded way too much space to the politicians. And if you look at the trajectory of every country that has developed, the reality is that you can't actually, you don't just have all this infrastructure ceded to you just like that. You have to engage in the political process. The likes of Rockefeller and all these guys had to go put in a Harry Truman as president to get what you see and to protect their assets. So you have to get engaged in politics. I don't doubt that, and I have. So there's no question. But I have a big question with how we engage. And if the way that we engage is by saying, oh, well, if government doesn't do X, Y, and Z, we can't win, or we can't progress. I think it's more helpful for us to consider the fact that the global pattern for how countries develop is not, countries don't develop because their countries have great policies for encouraging entrepreneurship. Great entrepreneurs, right, develop their countries and then build in great policies for entrepreneurship that are suitable to the environment. That's how America evolved. So a lot of the problems that Ory talks about are problems for innovators to solve, not for governments to solve. When we solve the problem of 40% of people spending their money on food, yes, we can solve that problem. We can make cheaper food, right? Can we solve the problem of government of a postal service that's broken? Yes, we can solve that problem. Let's take over the postal system. It's a matter of money. The Chinese are doing it. Can we solve the problem of no roads? Yes, we can solve that problem. Let's make it easy for our diaspora to invest in roads, and we take them over. So there are innovation solutions to these problems, and I don't want us to cede that space to the government, because these guys are wasteful and they have no good ideas. So my fear is we cede that to government, and then we even get a worse off version of it. I think COVID is presenting us with an excellent opportunity for us to be the ones who say, hey, we'll bail you out. But in exchange for bailing you out, here's the next 10 things that we want in exchange for it, because now we've got the money, you've got a huge debt burden, and you can do nothing. And then I think that if we engage that way, we're going to get more out of it. That if we go there cap in hand, begging governments to use World Bank loans they're going to eat out of to go do infrastructure. I don't think that would work.
All right. Peris, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well, but I'd also like to throw in the angle of you've tested Farm Drive, it's working. You've got amazing numbers, and you've shown that you've shown the impact of getting farmers credible access towards capital or towards finance that helps them actually. So the job to be done is they need to grow. They've got seasonal. Their patterns are seasonal, and that's why they can't go to the banks and things like that. What do you need? What do you need from whether it's government or other entities to then take this across the continent? To come to Zambia, to go around the world, and to take this across the continent?
Yeah, I think primary lending in Africa has been a bank function largely, but a lot of banks don't really lend to the people they're supposed to lend to, but they have huge capital assets and they're best placed to hold the risk of lending. We tried, as I mentioned, we put in some of our own balance sheet and tried to do some form of lending, tried to raise more capital, which ended up being like building two startups. On one hand, you're trying to build a capital base, you're trying to raise money, and on the other hand, you're trying to build the technology that's required to drive that capital to where it's needed. I think we need more financial institutions adopting the solutions that entrepreneurs are presenting them. In our case, we've built amazing platforms, amazing technology to drive loans to a niche market, to a new market that's really, really big, that they haven't been looking at, either because they don't have the tools or because they don't really understand that sector. But we've shown them that it's a viable sector and you could make some good returns, both and impact in this sector. So we need more financial institutions, both by government mandate, actually investing in agriculture, and by agriculture all the way from manufacturing. We mentioned warehouses in this case. That's supposed to be government infrastructure, all the way to the smallholder farmers. Currently, as we speak, in a lot of African governments, less than 1%, less than 1% of commercial lending goes to the agriculture sector, but it's the highest contributor to the GDP. In Kenya, it's between 3 to 4%, and it's been like that for the last 15 years. We have a government corporation that was set up in the 60s, right after independence, that was supposed to be lending to smallholder farmers and agriculture, but a lot of that money ends up in in the pockets of politicians. It doesn't really go to the smallholder farmers. So we need government to be kind of like regulate that we have to put commercial funding in this and these sectors, and this smart funding needs to go into these sectors, and financial institutions as well to adopt agriculture as one of their top line sectors that they're looking at for investment. I don't want to be running around raising money to lend, building the tech to lend. It's a lot of work. We can't entrepreneur ourselves. I'm going to reiterate that we can't entrepreneur ourselves out of all these problems. There are areas where other players, traditional players like banks that exist, where they need to step in.
Oh, great! No, thanks for that. So we've talked about the potential that entrepreneurs can have with regards to certain areas where they can build solutions, and building on the premise that definitely entrepreneurs can innovate and provide solutions that where gaps exist within our context. And then we've come back in and said, okay, great, is our government ready to support us? What can governments do? And what are the responsibilities? And I love the fact that we've clarified the fact that we should be engaging government, because there's certainly a role that they should be playing. And I love the phrase that Ory brought in, is like we've ceded control. We've ceded control towards certain levers of control, and allowing ourselves to get back into that engagement to allow us to then push the agenda and make sure that this hopefully becomes, for lack of a better term, easier, even though we have grand plans towards getting things fixed across the continent. I'd like to come back to the context of the future, and let's talk about the talent that we need. Let's talk about the other resources that we need to actually get this to happen. So, any takers on what does Africa look like for you 20 to 50 years from now? Okay, maybe 50 years, maybe. But what does Africa look like for you for 20 years from now? And what do we need to make happen to get there? Anybody?
I can go first. I think talent. Yes. What we're seeing is there's definitely talent there, both local, diaspora, and what I've seen has transformed over time is this the interconnection, and perhaps I'm putting a point there that we've not leveraged diaspora enough. Actually, if you look at India, Vietnam, many other countries, their ability to tap into that capital and not just, not everyone has to come back. In fact, some people are just stay there. And this is this conference is a great example of how do we leverage that capital. They're much more mature now. Angel Investing Networks is involved. A few other folks are involved. If you want to seed startups and seeding them early rather than crying about, other people won't fund us. Yeah, we should just fund ourselves, right? So I think there's leveraging diaspora more and more interconnectedness, I think, is an opportunity. I'm very excited about this, the Africa, the Free Trade Agreement, because I think the more our markets are too small individually. So just bringing down those regionally, if you can scale regionally, to transport or policies and so on, and serving our markets. Our markets are big enough. If you have less borders, I think that's an opportunity. I think data, we still have a long way to go. If you think about what Geo did for India, if we just bring down the costs where phone and surfing, even if it's on TikTok the whole day, is neither here nor there for the average person. That unlocks so much. And so thinking about how we really lower the costs of connectivity at scale, and that was done by the private sector. You can see now Facebook, Amazon, everyone else jumping in. I think there's room to go there in terms of connectivity. I'd love to see that. I think we have so many pain pills. We've improved, but too many people are building vitamins, nice to have, and you're not going to scale or make money there. There are So if you look around every day and think about all the things everything I've built has been built on something that I thought was painful, that didn't need to be painful. And so thinking more about all the pain pills we could be building, I suspect we have the talent, but maybe the energy is being put towards vitamins and not pain pills. I'll stop there and let the others chime in.
Great. Thank you, Ory. Peris, would you like to come in? Or do you have any thoughts towards that?
From my end, sitting on the side of entrepreneurship and seeing how much impact we've had in the last 5 years with my business partner, and how much we've learned about the opportunity that exists in the market. If we can build in the next 20 to 50 years, if we can build the right, we can keep building the right environment for younger entrepreneurs like myself to come in and identify problems and solve them. And as E has mentioned in the comments, create an environment where we are attracting both domestic and international capital, I think will make a lot of strides faster and accelerate faster in areas that government hasn't really made progress in the last 50 to 60 years. We'll make much more progress. We'll probably half or a tenth make the time we need to get to where we need to be, half it by 50% or even a tenth of it to get to where we need to be. If we create the right environment for entrepreneurs. I believe in entrepreneurs because I'm an entrepreneur myself, and having seen the amount of work and impact and systems we've built straight out of college, I believe the same can happen in all the countries from the young age.
All right, great. E, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, you were saying something. Keep going.
No, please do. I was going to repeat the question for you, but please jump in. Yeah.
Okay, I was listening. Well, I think for me, there's a bunch of levers that I think the future will be built on. And I think there is no better time than now. But the premise will still remain that as an ecosystem, we all have to be thinking bigger. We're still chasing after a lot of small stuff. We're still chasing after, all the funding is going to white Kenyans, or I don't know. There's a lot of silly arguments that I hear every day, and we continue to constrain our entrepreneurs because we don't fund them enough, even when we can, right? We don't give them enough support. We don't push the boundaries of what they're building. We don't set vision at a high level, so that entrepreneurs are empowered to not just build good businesses. What does it mean to build a good business in Africa? It means nothing if you can't transform the landscape. We need to focus our entrepreneurs on building transformational businesses. And there's no better time than now because, this COVID thing has raised the world to the ground. And for the first time, the government won't be distracted by aid money because everybody's trying to save themselves. They won't be distracted by Africa is rising bubble talk. They now have to deal with the fundamentals, which is it's me and you in Nigeria, and we better figure out a way to solve our problems or you're going to die. So if entrepreneurs can be bolder and take advantage of the moment, a whole new world opens up to us, right? But if we continue to deal with non-issues, we're going to be stuck. And look, the truth of the matter is the eyes of the world are on us because as soon as they're done solving their problems, they're going to need to find growth in new places and they're going to be here before you know it. So if we don't solve it, somebody else will come and solve it for us. But again, the key thing is for African entrepreneurs to think bigger and solve more fundamental problems. How can we feed our people? How can we get infrastructure working? How can we re-architect the global capital landscape? Remittances are not just coming to pay $100 bills. Remittances are moving in to buy houses, to build infrastructure, to invest in the continent. Everybody wants to do a remittance company, but dude, you want to settle for taking $100 and giving Visa and MasterCard half of that or whatever? 5% or whatever, just so you can move my. I mean, I don't understand the small thinking that we're seeing across the continent. And I think if we don't sit up as an ecosystem and understand it really is up to us, right? If this continent is going to get out of the hellhole that it is, we're not going to move anywhere. We're just going to keep making a lot of noise.
Yeah. So let's talk about building businesses that can grow and testing them in markets where they can. And I know that people are asking questions within the chat there, but I'm happy that Ory and E are jumping in and answering some of those. So that's why I haven't referred to them, because they're actually getting responses. But so I talked to an entrepreneur in Nigeria, and I said, okay, great. What are your plans for scale? They'll say, listen, there are 3 cities in Nigeria, for example, that have populations larger than most African countries. So why am I looking at other African countries yet? Which could be the same said possibly for Kenya with regards to population. Most of Southern Africa has populations. Zambia is hovering around 18 million, Malawi 19, Zimbabwe somewhere around 13. So you get the picture that our populations are really pretty much lower than smaller than Lagos, pretty much. But I steal from that doesn't stop ambition, in my opinion, because if I look at Sweden and the fact that you can still have a global company like Spotify, Estonia, and you still get a Skype, that shouldn't stop people from thinking Africa-wide. Does the ACFTA lend itself towards leveling the field so that entrepreneurship can grow across the continent? Anybody?
Well, I can speak to that. I'm talking too much, but maybe Auntie Ory goes first.
Yeah, let's hear from Ory.
Maybe speak on the more technical things, but I think that's kind of the wrong lens, right? Because I'd even ask, what's stopping us from building products that can be used in Estonia? Why sometimes are we limiting? There's some problems that we have that are problems in Indonesia, in Vietnam, etc. Second, COVID actually presents an opportunity, not just as markets, where people will be hedging, right? You don't all your risk now in China or Asia. You start to think about where else can I manufacture? Where else can I set up? Where else can I get similar standards of delivery? If I want to build my widgets or my toothpicks or my masks or whatever. So I think limiting ourselves just to the 40 million in Kenya, etc., is wrong, actually. If you start from the position, this is why Ushahidi was able to scale quickly, that you're building a tool that anyone in the world can use. I think we don't do enough of that, just to maybe shift the lens. When we talk about thinking bigger, is thinking global. And why aren't we building products that can go anywhere? Why are we building payment rails that can look at Wirecard now is screwing people all over the world? Like, why are our developers on Wirecard and not on thinking not just, Nigeria is 200 million, so I'm good. But the world, this problem is a problem in other parts of the world, is something that we should elevate. And on the free trade agreement, I think it's more on just brick and mortar boring stuff, like how do you tax across, but which is actually really important. I think it will make it easier from a simplified, when you say you're ready to go for scale, there's a simplified kind of rules of it, similar to the EU, where all the rules have been hashed out, and it's very easy to know then how your product moves around. But I think add more to that on the details.
Oh, great. E in 2 minutes.
So, I agree with, Auntie Ory said most of it. And again, I come back to this idea of not thinking big enough. Why would you think 3 cities in Nigeria is enough for a business? When Facebook is how many million cities? When Uber is how many million cities? That entrepreneur is not thinking big enough, and quite frankly, is disappointing. Because if the person is just thinking about building a great business in 3 cities, they have no clue why they're in entrepreneurship.
Great.
It's not just about making money.
Oh, great. Peris, in closing, when do we see you in Zambia and around the world?
And in Nigeria.
After COVID, I'm laying the rails. I'm in South Africa already virtually. After COVID, I'm in Zambia in person. Yeah. The thing with entrepreneurship is sometimes it takes you 5 years to build the rails and the infrastructure. And then once you're in that growth stage and once you're ready to scale, things are easier because you've made the networks and you have the right systems in place. I need that $200 million so that I don't have to wait for the banks. Thank you.
Yeah, let's work on that.
Great. Everybody, it's been a pleasure connecting with you here and wrapping up this conversation around that there's a potential for the possibilities. Africa has great problems worth solving. And I hope that we get the mindset of, I hope with this conversation, we get the mindset of looking at those opportunities and exploring how. Yes, there are questions around, is it possible to take away healthcare from government? Is it possible to take electricity away from government? But the question is, if possible, how? And those are questions worth, and it's a great place to get to start from. And I hope that we can connect, whether it's on LinkedIn, Twitter, and have these conversations. And if anybody's coming to Lusaka, please feel free to come over to Bongo Hive. We'll be happy to have these conversations with you and give you the introductions that you need to do to make Lusaka a start point or Lusaka an entry point for your business to go to. And I believe that the different people that you have here can help you to get into other countries like Nigeria, Kenya, with regards to doing that. I'd like to thank the organizers of the Africa Renaissance Conference for organizing this. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation, and we believe that at the end of this, the actions taken will include that we will definitely involve the diaspora, address issues around data, talent, capital, leveraging the AFCFTA towards helping entrepreneurs make sure that the African continent becomes, with this talk about the African continent being the next one, actually becomes a reality, and that we're actually building towards that. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the panelists. And
hi, Wizard.
You guys made the time.
Good to see you.
Hey. Yeah,
well done.
My job is just to make sure things done on time. Thanks to everyone
that joined
the session. The next session that's coming up is the future of global remote work, moderated by Muya Musokotwane Sid Sijbrandij. I'm very sure that I've butchered that name. Please, my apologies, Sid. Olabinjo Adeniran from Future Africa, Harriet Kariuki from AfriJob, and Ladi Tawak, one of the best UX researchers on the planet. Let's leave this session and head over to the other session. If you're on your computer, you're going to see the Sessions tab on the left-hand sidebar. Just click Sessions and jump into the next one. And we're going to leave this one. Thank you guys for your time. Enjoy your evening. Take care. Don't forget to sanitize.